Hello. Now that it's been a few days after the Champions League Fukuoka finished, I would like to look at all the top 16 decks that made it. There's like such an insane lineup. I know people are talking about like how crazy this regionals was, but before we actually look at the deck list, there's a couple trends here that we're noticing. Like we're noticing quite a few wall decks here, and this won't be like it for the walls. On top of that, we're also seeing this Tera Box deck, which I talked about in one of my recent videos. It's the one with the Raikou thumbnail or the Tor thumbnail, depending on which one you get shown. But yeah, and then of course there's fucking Feraligatr winning the whole thing. So yeah, let's just go. Let's just go ahead and actually get started with the Feraligatr. This deck is just an extension off the Feraligatr deck that we were showcasing off earlier. And what's kind of nice about this is now it's attacking the Milotic in, and the Milotic is good because it can just shut down a few of those matchups. Like, Pult can be a little nasty if they are able to spread damage around it, but we're really just like saying fuck you to Pult and playing a lot of cards that are able to kind of shut it down, like the triple Monkey Dory. The only thing that's a little bit sketchy about this list that I noticed at first glance is there's only one Relicanth, and so if your game plan is built around Big Bite or Reverse Thrust, and you can't get either of those online, then that sucks a lot. But, we do run a different A spec with the Precious Trolley, which I think is super optimal for this deck. Because with the Artisan was kind of slow sometimes. At getting your field actually set up, which is the only kind of rough part, is like if they're able to exploit your early game, then the Feraligatr deck has a really hard time like coming back. But I like the Precious Trolley and the TM Evolution as opposed to the Grand Tree because it also allows you to take the Milotic and get the setup immediately, and then also just set up all your guys a lot more efficiently. You can also do it behind a Mimikyu, so that's good. And this is a deck where it's like you either do lock them to like actually save yourself from dying or not. So I feel like you're fine passing up a turn on the Itchy Pollen in order to TM Evolution, or you can just go for the Itchy Pollen too. That's like not too bad. And then, of course, there's a couple other cards in here that I was already thinking about or even bought for my own deck list. Like, I like the Rescue Board a lot because if your game plan is about the reverse thrust, then being able to pivot the Mimikyu back in and out is really nice. On top of the fact that Long's Vacuum is gone now from this post rotation format, which means that the Rescue Board has a lot of value, right? I think double cape is fine. I think a little bit more is excessive, and then two Lonazane is fine. So this really just looks like the culmination of everything that we've been seeing with these deck lists here. We even cut the chorus out to just run the Precious Trolley instead, which I think is optimal and fine. So yeah, I think this is a very good deck. I think it's a good extension off the Feraligatr engine. The only thing that sketches me out, like I said, is the one Relicanth being prized. But it's not like you don't have access to these attacks, even if you have the full Gator out. And since we're not using Grand Tree, we'll more likely be slow evolving a lot of these guys up instead. So you still have access to all those tools. I just like the fact that in the Grand Tree version, you're able to like Torrential Heart pretty immediately, and you can start using the Torrential Heart on the bench. Where this one is going to take a little bit more time to get there, but it's going to get there more consistently, I think. Yeah, I mean this is a good deck list. I really don't have too much else to say. I'm also not sure like if you need to run the Milotic or not, but I'm sure it helps in a lot of matchups. And it's pretty easy inclusion if you're running the TM Evolution in your deck. But if you're not running TM Evolution and you're still running Grand Tree or some other ace spec, I would definitely not be running the Milotic because the Feebas is too easy to kill. Like that stuff does like Monkey Dory damage or just like so many other ways of putting the damage on. So if you're not running the TM Evolution package, don't run the Milotic is pretty much all I could say. But otherwise, like good job winning the Gator. Deck is not easy to play. And then we got Goldengo, Dragapult. I didn't even realize there was a Goldengo Dragapult finals. I didn't watch the finals. I kind of only watched the tour match for his win in. But we got the Energy Surge Pro alongside a fair spread of energies. 2-2 on the fire, the Psychic obviously, and then 3 on the metal. And then we got what else we got here? We have the Dracloaks for just some additional draw alongside the Goldengo. And then some other parts that make sense, like the Crispin. The Crispin can allow us to attach like an energy to Goldengo and then search out a different energy from our deck. Tia Vivo also makes a lot of sense here, as we have just so many ways of getting item blocking, getting stuffed out. So we don't want to be too reliant on like our Ultra Balls to get our stuff set up, and especially because we're trying to steal second away from a lot of players already because of the prevalence of Badu. So having a TM evolution here is nice. This Gimmickle is also okay. I know there's a couple other options you could be running, but I like the 70 HP. It feels really nice and secure. And then the minor Aaron running is just like, okay. I'm not too sure what the other Gimmicles available are. I know there's the continuous coin toss. I think it's like flip a coin until you get tails, you do X amount of damage. There's Call for Family, and I want to say there's another one that's like coin flip until the end of the turn. They can't knock you out. So, I do think that this Gimme Goal is probably the best option. Other than that, how particularly well is this deck placed in the metagame? What is your out to Mimikyu, right? You have to have some way to get past that EX barrier. I do think that having the split on the attackers is really nice, though, because Goldengo is going to lose the course, though, but Dragapult can get past it, and Goldengo could beat the Milotics for the Dragapult, while the Dragapult, could do it vice versa. And I suppose, like, you'd just be using, like, Monkey Dory or Dracloak Attack to get past the Mimikyu, so you have pretty good outs to beating Wall, which is why I think this deck made it so far. And, it's not a combination that you're, like, it's not like super intuitive to play this stuff, but Dragapult's so easy to charge up with like Crispins in the deck, and it makes sense because we're already running all the energies, so what's the inclusion of a few more, right? Yeah, I think the deck list is pretty solid. I'm trying to think if there's like anything else I'm really missing. I mean, 4 Arvits makes sense. There's only one Pokegear, which maybe is a little sus, because if your whole game plan is to get the team evolution off, you might want a little bit more. I'd also maybe consider a town store in one of these slots. The town store can get the team evolutions and the rescue board. Oh, you know what I'd run like Tatsugiri. I feel like Tatsugiri would be pretty good in this type of deck list. Just giving you even more outs and giving you a pivot option for when you are down on, when you're like getting Iona down, and things like that. So I think like a Tatsugiri might fit really well into this type of deck. But otherwise, pretty solid. Kind of what you would expect from this combination, with the only thing being unexpected is the combination itself. But yeah. Alright. Third place, which is a Blissey deck. Okay. I played Blissey Ninja recently, and it definitely doesn't feel as bad as it did before. I think it's just because like before I was trying to force it with some very unconventional attackers, but I think with like the whole Monkey Dory package and TM Turbo Energize, it works out really well. Here's the stupid prize checking memo here, which I guess is okay because if we're playing one-ofs of all the wall cards, then we want a way to be able to get them out, and because we play like 5 different like wall techs here. So I think the memo actually kind of has a case here, as much as I don't like this card because it doesn't really do anything immediately for you, or even like, yeah, it doesn't have an immediate effect, and it also forces you to recheck your prices, which is also super annoying. But otherwise, this is just like kind of standard. This deck was meant to bully like Dragapults, for example, and what you would do is you just use the Chansey, TM Turbo Energize a bunch of energies on the field, and then move the energies around the Monkey Dory to press a lot of damage off of you. I wonder if this deck fought the Ferligatr, because I'm not sure. I feel like this deck may be alright in the Gator, because I guess Gator can one-shot you if they use like Monkey Dory damage and then do the Giant Wave. It's really tough to say. Huh. I don't think I thought about like this version of the deck being as well placed as it is, but it honestly doesn't seem that bad. And then we obviously play like a heavy tool count with the TM Turbo Energize and the evolutions. What's nice about the Energize, by the way, is that you can spread the energies around. So if you have 2 Monkey Dory, you can put 1 energy on each of them, which is super, super solid. And then if we're also playing the memo, I think like low key, you probably just want to keep 1 fighting energy in the deck. You can even like extend that over to maybe the psychic energy as well and the water energy, because if we're playing the memo anyways to get them out, then I feel like you should be able to be just fine. tagging those energies out, and then you can maybe make room for like one more dark energy. Just a thought, because I guess you still want like higher energy counts in order to team turbo energize out and have energies in play to move around. So I guess it's not the worst call in the world, but I do think it's like a I do think it's worth the thought that because you're already playing the memo to dig out the 1-1 lines, that you don't need to have the energy be so split in this specific way, because losing out on like an energy off the field, like if you only have one dark energy being passed around your guys, that could suck a lot, especially when you need to get the energy back onto the Blissey for the attack. It's sort of my thought process with it. So I take like whatever one of these attackers is the least important, and take one of the energies out. And my guess would probably be probably the Milotic is the least impactful, because you already kind of have a positive matchup in the Dragapult, and then you do pretty well to all that other Terra Pokemon. So like the Ugrapons, the Terapagoses. I think you do pretty well to all of those, especially because Ferligatr can also wall those guys out. So I think like you take out one water energy and just run a fourth dark, and that would be fine. Like I said, I think this is the only case where you can make for mentally memo, where all your tech attackers are 1-1 line, so you really want to make sure that you can't prize them. But other than that, like, this is a super interesting list to come out. The Hero's Cape is also really funny. I wish we had a way to very easily bounce this around, but we kind of don't. This deck isn't like a petty pull-up deck, so we're gonna have one Hero's Cape and we're gonna deal with it, but still solid. Yeah. Cool deck. Was not expecting Blissey to be back on my radar, but like I mentioned earlier, I think the wall decks are just like insanely good into this meta spread, because without canceling Cologne, I think a lot of people are just sort of unprepared. This guy's running Pokefire A. What the fuck? Who the hell is making these lists? What type of JP pills do I need to be on? But this is wall, Instead of running, I feel like we're running a different wall. Oh, we've been running Noivern. What's the Ferligatr do? Why are we running the Ferligatr instead of the Noivern? Is there? Well, I guess the Noivern was super impactful against Lugia mostly, because you can put down the Temple Sinnoh and then use the second attack to wall them off. So I guess it's just easier because it's ability, and you don't have to set up the Noivern lock, right? And they can't boss around it. Interesting. I also like this attack a lot more because it just does more damage. I think having to put 30 onto one guy can kind of suck for Monkey Dory, because it gives him like a free passive damage regardless of what happens on the field, but it's still not that bad, right? Especially if you use your own Monkey Dory, you can put like 30 onto a Duskull and then move 30 off to kill it. But I guess this just makes a lot more sense over Noivern, because we're playing the Noivern right now to help against Lugia. Okay. I think I get it now. I'm understanding. What I'm not understanding is why the fuck am I running this? This is a crazy card. I guess one of your win cons is your opponent using when they're, like, subsidiary attackers. Like, I guess like a Dracloak, for example, right? And they're able to chip through, so the Pokevital A allows you to bypass that singular win con that they have. This is really funny. I like the counter gate a lot, just because it allows you to apply offensive pressure quicker if you're losing. So if your opponent has a really good board state set up and they're just plowing through, I really like the counter gate as an option to, slow them down with your own offensive pressure while you try to come back into the game. And so I think like some of the cooler cards in this deck list are tailored towards that specifically. Or like I said, tailored towards helping out in those situations that you would lose, as opposed to like helping out with other general circumstances, which is why I really like. I'm kind of vibing with the Pokevital A now, because it can be like one of your opponent's win cons that they're just gonna chip you down in some very obscure way, and the Pokevital A just comes through. Like for example, we're seeing a lot of Cornerstone, and not just in like this top 16, but if you look at like any Japanese list that can like that's like already like Ogre Pods or just even a Spare Friday energy. Like this guy's like everywhere. I'm seeing him around so much, it's crazy. And so I think I think the fact that the Cornerstone can go through basically everything in your deck makes the Vital A kind of strong. Other than that, like this is pretty standard fare for the most part. Maybe one Buddy Pop that is I was gonna say it's a bit sketch, but I guess it's not because it's only pulling out the Tatsu and the Feebas, so a one of is fine. Yeah, I'd say this is probably pretty solid. Um, the Pokevinyl A obviously being the shocker card here, but it makes a lot of sense because if people are already in the Cornerstone, then the Pokevinyl A is your specific attack card against it. The only other thing that I can mention is like maybe a Team League headquarters, but it kind of messes up with your own TM Evo, so a little hard to justify. And then we got a not wall deck, hopefully. Maybe it has a cornerstone in it, but I don't know. This is just Tera Box. I already kind of covered this video on my channel, like I said earlier. So if you're interested, just click on the Tord video. But oh, the Ditto's the swag. I think I saw the Ditto pop up in the stream. But I like the Ditto inclusion a lot because it allows you to just pull out like a very specific attacker or some type of setup. So maybe you're missing the fan on turn one, and so Ditto can just turn into the fan, or it can turn into Badoo after everything. So it's so nice when you're playing somebody like specific setup mods here. You can also do like other fringe things like turn into a Terra Pokemon, so you have more bench space, right? Or just enable your Noctowl next turn. This is pretty standard fare. I feel like there's one card missing. Oh, we're missing Terapagos in here. Terapagos is really swag. I'm surprised that like this deck list got away without running like any of the tech, though. Because we've seen so much like Cornerstone and Milotic and just all the other lists so far that I'm surprised this deck is getting away without it. I've also seen a lot of these lists run a Professor Turo scenario, which is something I wasn't entirely sure on until someone pointed it out. It's, oh, so you can scoop at the Noctowls and get more usage out of them. And clear up a bench space too, because sometimes you'll just have 3 Noctowls sitting there, and you're just waiting for your opponent to bump your save, they just never do. So the Turo gives you like an additional way to reset this back up. And it might be a little bit greedy too, because like usually it's like your whole turn is being committed to the Turo to empty up a bench slot. But it's kinda okay. I guess it also pulls the Pikachu up, but they pop the Resolute Heart on it. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a super solid list. I wouldn't play this exact version of the deck, even though it's the highest place in Tera Box that we have. I think there's a few more things that I value personally, and I also, I'm a little bit biased because I'm really like using Crown Opal, so I think those are some things that I'd probably look out for. The supporter line also seems, kind of scuffed. Where I'm also not sure if I'm a fan of the Turo. I probably have to play around with it a little bit more, and I might play it still and just like feel bad about it. But the Judge is also a bit wonky. I mean, Judge is just kind of a wonky card in general, just because it usually it can gut you more than it can gut the opponent sometimes, and then the one of research is also like crazy, especially because we don't have like a Liberty anymore to like pull this stuff up. This is an absolutely fine Terror Box list. I think the beauty of this deck is that you can kind of play in a shit ton of different directions. Like if you just look on a Pokekabuk, we're just gonna go here real quick. Pokekabuk, deck list, Terrestrial Box, and you just scroll through all these deck lists. They're so different. Like almost no list looks the same as another. And the chances of them being like a very similar list to another person, it might be because they just net decked it. So it's really hard to tell. There's just so many different directions you could go with this deck. Um, which is why it's hard to pin a point on what the deck list should look like. But I think the deck list should first and foremost be focused on the aspects that you like the most, because you're gonna feel more comfortable playing it. Which is why it's a bit hard for me to judge the Terra Box deck list. It says the Rigid Band, which I kind of like. Gives you an extra spicy option. There's no Tatsugiri or Monkey Dory in this deck. And this also features the Mimikyu, which the other ones didn't. So this is definitely like extremely focused on the hard walling aspect. And I guess the Pokevinyl A is just standard. Like, I might be missing that because I refuse to look at the wall deck list going on JP. I just know it just pops up and wins stuff. How much do I like the Rigid Band? What does the Rigid Band help with? Does it... I don't think Cornerstone cares about the Rigid Band. I think it goes past it. And the cape is kind of cool. What's kind of especially neat about the cape is you put the cape on like the basic Pokemon as well. if you have to like slow evolve as opposed to using TM Evo, and it gives you an additional out. And the Luxurious Cape is also like kind of good on the Mimikyu because the Mimikyu doesn't want to take damage, and Dragapult is a very popular deck. So being able to survive the Dracloak attack, which is a fire and a psychic for summoning damage, is especially nice. It just gives you an additional way of being able to outplay it. And other than that, kind of more standard typical fair stuff. There's the town store I talked about, the artisan to seem okay. Um, I don't have too much else to comment on with the rest of the deck. The Bunny Pop in here, instead of grabbing the Tossinguri, allows you to grab the Mimikyu instead, which is interesting. And I haven't even seen this Giraffe Rig. Oh, well, that could be a funny tech attacker, I guess. Is there anything else of note here? Not quite. I mean, it's Quad Crisp and Quad Arvin, and the Pokemon LA seems standard, I guess, at this point. It's so funny that like when we hit, this is the second time we had a rotation happen, and the like one of the better A specs being ran is like a really shitty one. So when the first rotation hit, and we got like our first set of A specs, Lugia was playing fucking Master Ball, bro. It was so stupid. Um, but makes sense. I mean, because that deck is a inconsistent piece of shit sometimes. So the Master Ball being in there is really funny. Is this deck list going to be any different? They placed around the same. Okay, this one looks a lot closer to the first list we saw, but this has the Hero's Cape, so I guess they're not all in the cape. We do run the Bravery Charm, which I also like think is acceptable because if the Mimikyu goes down, then that sucks. If I was running the Luxurious Cape, I almost want to consider like a Penny at some point because then I can use Penny to pick up the Mimikyu or the Cornerstone on your pawn and heal them up if the opponent is trying to go through those guys. Um, and the Bravery Charm is also acceptable too. I don't know where the Bravery Charm like affects the math on the Cornerstone off the top of my head, but it definitely allows Mimikyu to survive Dracloak, which is relevant. And it's like more than enough that it's like, oh, well, they can't Mimikyu and damage off. I guess Dragapult doesn't really play Mimikyu, so it's not relevant, eh? But, point still stands. Is it allows Mimikyu to survive the threshold, which is extremely good. Double Team Evo seems good. I don't have too much else to say. I mean, the shovel is relatively untouched for the most part, with mostly just like the tools being chopped up, and sometimes the extra attackers being chopped up. Because what seems very consistent is the Milotic, the Verdruff, and the Cornerstone, and then it seems like you can choose to run the Monkey Dory, you can choose to run the Mimikyu, and then sometimes you'll see like a Badoo or some other Sly engine in here. So, everything seems pretty standard. I'd say if you're looking for a base wall list to base your deck off of before you start making like crazy changes or want to test out other cards, I'd use this deck as the frame because it's definitely the most simplest and the straightforward out of all of them. Like I really can't call anything out in this deck list for being bad, right? Where like I'm not going to say this deck list is bad, but this deck list definitely has some more experimental cards in it with like the Rigipan and the Cape and the Pokevine A, and even like the Misynergies to a degree. So I think like if you're gonna take a deck list and build off of it, you want your deck list to be more simpler, more standard, because every card that's in there is kind of the norm, and so you can move like from that, which is why like I don't have anything to say about this list. It's just super solid and it's really safe, but it's kind of wall, which is a safe deck anyways. I feel like. Anyways, here's not a safe deck. Here's fucking Terapagos. Jesus Christ, what the hell? Was this Charizard knocked out? I didn't notice it on the preview. Oh, it sure was. Okay, well, we're going to Terapagos, which I think makes a lot of sense because currently, Badoo's a bitch. Badoo makes it so hard to set up multiple stage twos at once, which is why I think like the Pidgeot has fallen extremely out of favor. Is that Badoo is just putting a chokehold on a lot of these decks, and Terapagos compensates for this by one giving you the Rotom Spin, who can attack with the Fan Call, or not the Fan Call, but the Assault Landing, which is really good, and it just gives you like a mixed hybrid of a low to the ground plane, the Terapagos EX, alongside the Charizard. This deck also doesn't run the TM Vivos, which I think is a good game plan to have because what was I gonna say? Um, Oh, because like your early game play and your way around Badoo is to put offensive pressure against it, as opposed to trying to respond to it passively and slowly. Because the issue with like letting Badoo item lock you is your opponent's setup is just going to be even faster than yours, even if they're also playing a slow, gritty build-up deck, which is why Dragapult has done so well. Because Dragapult is going to spread damage onto a bunch of guys, while also, getting very far ahead thanks to Dracloaks and stuff like that. So I like this version of the deck a lot. That's a do I like every card in here? Um, it's kind of hard to say. We have a friend at our locals who plays Trapezard, and he really liked the deck. And I thought it was a good fit for him as well. So he'd probably have a little bit more to say. Um, but currently, I don't think there's anything like especially wrong with this deck. I do think like one Charmeleon is not out of the realm of the possibility though, because even slow evolving under the item block is not bad, and it just gives you a little bit extra security, especially because we're running so much ball search anyways with like the Nest Ball, the Ultra Ball, and the two Terror Orbs, and so being able to just grab the Charmeleon would not be half bad, I think. But honestly, like this is a really good frame for building this deck list, and you're also able to get away with running somebody of the one of supporters or even like small lines here because you have the Noctowns that fetch them out whenever you like. I'd say the only other thing that's like kind of surprising here is no Night Stretcher. There's double Super Rod, which I think makes some sense, but I think I'd probably run the split here on the Super Rod and Night Stretcher. Because Night Stretchering up like a Dusknoir from your discard pile that you discarded earlier, or even like a Charmander that just got knocked out, seems especially nice to have. And so I really like having the Night Stretcher option in this deck. Also allows you to like pull the Fez back up if they knock out the Fez. So that's kind of where my thoughts on like this is right now. Is that I would take out one Super or one Night Stretcher, but it's not like a drastic enough change that I'm gonna like completely discredit what this guy did. But Trapezard, huh? I feel like I'm getting surprised by all these deck lists. Then we got. Hopefully, this deck doesn't surprise me. This is just fucking uh, Pult Dusk, a Dusk Pult. We have the unfair stamp, which makes a lot of sense. I'm shocked to see how many Pults are like not running the Sparkling Crystal, but it turns out that under Badulok, you don't have to be as quick off the ground anymore. I think one of the things that like hurt Dragapult before is that it was kind of too slow, or it was too slow in a fast metagame that it needed Sparkling Crystal to catch up and get stuff going. But now we have other ways of slowing the game down, and so Dragapult can now actually get away with attaching two energies for its attack, and we still have a Crispin in here to like quickly accelerate that. I also like the two Dusknoir here, just because it makes it way more reliable to pull it back up if you have to like Ultra Ball for it. And three Counter Catchers also kind of insane, but I guess this is more like a deck that's like, okay, if you evolve into your own Dragapult or your own Charizard, I get the Dusknoir bomb it and then Counter Catcher it up and kill it, which is why I think we have such a heavy count on the Counter Catchers right here. And it makes a lot of sense too. It also gives the Jock more value because now you can use the Jock to get the Dragapult or the Dusknoir, like whatever evolution you're missing, and then you'll still have like plenty of counter catchers available to possibly draw into or grab off the Dracloaks or the Fez. So I think it makes the Jock a lot more viable. So I actually am thinking about it a lot more. I really like this specific direction of the deck because it's picking a goal. It's like, hey, I am going to be able to one-shot everything with the help of Dusknoir and Dragapult. And so we're going to run good tools to help with that, like the Jocks, like the double Dusknoir, like the triple counter catcher. Like all of these things compound together to let this Dragapult attack from a very aggressive angle and being able to take these very high prize like high HP knockouts. Where normally this deck would be more fine with just kind of grinding the game out and using Fanadine to occasionally get incremental value into a board state that your opponent can't win. But this also plays around like the Monkey Dory stuff as well. Because this gives you some very quick offensive pressure and allows you to take knockouts, leaving the opponent with hardly any Monkey Dory damage on the field, right? The Unfair Stamp is just kind of the icing on the cake because it will also like strictly bully the opponent even more. And hey, I'm a big fan of using Unfair Stamp to fuck people over. I've been playing Unfair Stamp in my Greninja deck ever since it came out for this exact reason. So I think this is an extremely potent combo. This might be my favorite deck I've seen so far, um, just because it looks like a normal deck that you would play, but it's very very focused on its one goal that separates it from the other decks in its in its league. So yeah, that deck is super swag. Then we have more Tera Box. Was this towards list actually? No, I don't. Was this towards list? What the fuck? No, no, towards list is next. Uh, I saw what the fuck because I looked at Ferligatr for a second. Holy guys, people were insane about putting this card in there. But Terra Box seemed to be really popular in the event. I mean, it made three, or yeah, there was three people playing it, and there's other decks that are extremely popular too, like Raging Bolt. Yeah, like Raging Bolt was just like one of the other big ones, and so having a counter tech for the mirror seems really helpful. Like you can't underestimate how good having a tech for the mirror is, or even just like a very common deck. Like Lost Box didn't need to run Crown Opal when I played it, right? You had a pretty favorable time in the Raging Bolt, but I figured I'd just make my life easier by also playing it, and that also comes up in a lot of matchups. So when you tech against a decent majority of the field, like if you're hitting that deck like 13-20% of the time, where your tech does something, and I'd say that's a pretty good tech because every other time you just get to ignore it or move on, right? But in those cases where you hit like your 1 to 20% of your matchups, like it's gonna make those matchups so much easier, and it could like sometimes just straight up auto win them as well, which is really why I really like it. Just another instance of like Ditto popping up too. One thing I forgot to mention before is that you can fan rotom and grab the Ditto and then transform into any of the other guys, which gives it like extra flexibility. So I think it's super strong as well. Particular, you could start fan rotom, pull out a Ditto, retreat, use Badoo, or yeah, use Ditto and then go into Badoo, which I think is really neat. I think it's really strong. Other than that, doesn't have anything other than that was too fancy. I would say like the defining factor of a Terra Box deck is its high crispin count. I've seen a few lists run only like one, which I thought was absurd that you call it even a Terra Box at that point. But like the crispin is really what pieces the deck together. And we're also not even like making room for the energies for the fur draft here, since we already run the two psychic energies for the Clefairy already. So just having like the fur draft here is really nice. The only thing that this cuts in place for this line, I think, is that typically you'd see like one Lily's Pearl in these deck lists to make the Clefairy a one prizer, because the Clefairy is like pretty susceptible, right? It's kind of meant the solo Dragapult, so I guess this takes a harder stance against Pult, which seems like a weird matchup to like forfeit some of your strengths into. I feel like if that's the case, like if you're gonna run this instead, you should probably run the Milotic instead of the Farigiraf. Because even though I think the Milotic might be the weakest part of the wall trio, um, it definitely helps against Pult a lot. And Pult can kind of fuck up your board state very easily, I feel like, by taking a knockout against like a Badoo or setting up like all of these guys to get knocked out in one hit. And it breaks your Pikachu as well. So I kind of like the Milotic as like the fuck you answer to Dragapult the most. And Clefairy can do that too. Like Clefairy can be a one prizer, like quotation marks, against Dragapult due to the Lily's Pearl and hit it for super effective weakness. But if you're not going to be running those cards, then your matchup against it is going to get significantly worse. Which I do wonder if this deck ended up losing to a Pult. I guess it really wasn't it. Oh, I guess it was the Goldengo Pult that it could have fought, and that sucks. But I don't have too much else to say. I mean, this is definitely an interesting take on the deck. I think a lot of people are just gonna have fun looking at these Terra Box decks anyways, because it's not a deck like it's a deck that we could technically build, but it's not one that a lot of people are gonna be familiar with. Anyways, here's Torn Myco actually running the fucking Terapagos. This is another reason why I don't like the fur draft. Just set up your fucking Terapagos, man. Like it's not that hard. It's the same thing. It's like less deck space. I think the only thing you have to compensate for is no, you don't have to compensate anything because you're already running all these energy types for the Pikachu and the Argopons. So I don't know, just run the Cherry EX. It's not that hard. This list I think is super solid. I'm surprised it only runs 2 Night Stretcher. I figured with like so many of these one-of Pokemon, you'd run more of them, but it's fine. I also like the Ursaluna too, because the Ursaluna can bypass your opponent's Terapagos. And so I think I was seeing. I'm not trying to get a new tab. I'm trying to come here. And then I have to take a peek and scroll through a lot of these decks and see like what the meta field looks like. Because if a lot of people are running their own Terapagos, which kind of like obliterates this matchup. Like you see as I keep going down, we're gonna keep seeing like Terapagos. But if Terapagos itself is really popular, then having the Blood Moon is a good option for getting past it, because Terapagos can only wall out non-colorless Pokemon. And so the Blood Moon can just go ahead and one-shot it. That's where I think this comes in. Is there anything else too particularly exciting about this deck? I know. I think Tord is just like the hero of the Tera Box guys running the Terapagos for me. That's my champion right there. Actually, how many counter catchers and bosses did altogether on a list run? I'm actually super curious about that now. Because this runs 2 boss. Okay, so Tord is 1 catcher, 1 boss. And then we got this list up here. This one was also kind of wacky. But this is 2 boss and 1 catcher. Okay. So they all ran different versions of their boss and catcher count. Huh. I don't know what that says. I think it just says that, like, this deck could be whatever the fuck you want. And so it's really hard to, like I said, pin a specific, like, list as your core. You know, with the wall decks, I could very easily point to, like, this deck being, like, the de facto, like, normie wall build, while everything else is experimental. But, like, Tera Box, I can't fucking pinpoint shit about it. It's just whatever people feel like running. And it's just the last wall deck. This one also has Pokevile. I think this one's pretty close to the first list that we saw, except they have an Origin in here. In a town store. Hold on, what the fuck? Okay, I may be going insane. I'm gonna open this up. No, I'm gonna open this up. Why can I not open up? I'm trying to open, like, an additional tab for it, but I can't do it for some reason. Okay, whatever. We're just gonna keep looking at this. But I feel like this list is extremely different from the first one. I mean, I don't think the first list was running Miss Energies. It also had a Bucky Dory, did not? Huh. Huh. Interesting. I mean, this deck is very simplified. It's very easy to read with the Pokevile. And then I'm gonna look at this one again, because I'm losing my mind trying to pick apart the differences. Yeah, so this one ran the Mucky Dories when the other one did it. It also ran the different Drifterag. This one was the counter gain as well. That was the spicy card. The counter gain's the spicy card that the other deck listed it. This one just ran the Rigibane instead, which is probably fine. I can't think of like specific math off the top of my head the Rigibane helps against. But it seems okay. But also, like I said, I really like the counter game from earlier because it allows you to quickly apply offensive pressure in situations where you're losing, and that's where I think the first list like did really well in that case, because it played all the tech cards for the situations that you're losing, and so it's sort of like emboldening what you're already good at, which I think the Rigiband doesn't do very well. And then we also got the Mist Energies, which also seem a little bit clunky. I just don't know what they help with, unless they prevent Dust Orb Bombs, but I don't think so. By your opponent's Pokemon, by the effects of attacks. Yeah, so it doesn't prevent Dust Orb Bombing like I thought. Yeah, I think the Mist Energies might be a necessary, because like even if your opponent has like spread options, oh, you know what? It helps against Mimikyu specifically, but I'm not sure how relevant that is. Like, are you in a situation where like Mimikyu's gonna beat the shit out of you, but you can't answer it back? Because we have the Cornerstone that get past it. And if we're losing really badly, we can use the counter game from earlier. We have the Pokeviral to get past it. So I really don't think that like the answer is to use Miss Energy to wall it out even further, because that just seems not super necessary. I think it's my I don't mind the Jet Energy though. I think the Jet Energy is perfectly fine, especially if we're going to run a Tatsukiri because it'll allow us to more reliably set up the Tatsu in the beginning, and it gives our Colress a little bit of like specific value too. But other than that, like I'm not too big of a fan of the extra inclusions in this deck, like the Rigid Band, like the extra special energies down here. They just do not seem that necessary. But I mean, congrats on getting top 16. I can't take that away from you. Then we got Bolt saving me from being on Fraud Watch. I think I called Bolt, like, in my head, I thought Bolt was just going to be, like, the strongest deck. Um, oh, this is so swag. I love this. This is awesome. This is so, so goofy. The more energies you put on it, the more damage it does. And this is also, like, the fans stuff. I like the Ditto. I think the Ditto is cool. I'm just not sure how you're supposed to implement it in this deck specifically. I guess you can like Nest Ball just for Ditto, and Latias retreat out and go into it, which is okay. It plays the instead of playing like the max area zero, it does play a jamming tower to bully the team Evo decks. And actually, I think that's really strong. I think jamming tower plus baby bolt is a really strong combination because it stops her from using TM Evo, which means that you can sometimes just punish them. And before they evolve, this raging bolt could snipe them. Oh, that's genius. That's so smart. That's awesome. The fuck? Why did I not think of that? This bolt's so funny. I can't stop looking at him. This attack is awesome. What the hell? Okay, that's actually sauce. This plays double Crispin too, which I think just makes it so earlier on you could more reliably get this baby bolt attack off and maybe even attack with the fan. Because I think I think that like I've been spoiled because I've been playing the deck with Ready Greninja for now because it hasn't rotated, and so I think having double Crispin is actually okay, even if it like technically feels bad, because you definitely want to be discarding more energies, right? And it still allows you to like more reliably get the baby bolt attack off, which can be really relevant. Like if your opponent's whole game plan is I'm gonna set up a Ferligatr EX, right, to wall out your raging bolts and your ogre pods. You really want the baby bolt to get past it, and it also solves your Mimikyu problem as well. I'm in love. I'm in love. This deck is cool. What the fuck? I'm gonna have to include this tech in here. I wasn't a fan of the jamming tower. Like, I just didn't give a shit about it. I was like, oh, I'll just run more Area Zeros. If my opponent busts my stadium, then oh well. But jamming tower to deny the TN Evo so you can kill the fucking bastard in the backline is so awesome. I I don't have to look at the list too much longer, but that's sick. Oh, it also doesn't play the funny glass trumpet, which is fine. The glass trumpet was kind of a meme. And then also like the energy retrievals here too. I've been seeing like one superior energy retrieval in Raging Bolt list, but I like the two energy retrieval a lot. I'm running like a big split. I think I'm running like two Night Stretcher, one energy retrieval, one superior, and then one glass trumpet, one Crispin. I'm probably definitely overkill on my like energy recovery, energy setup type of stuff. Which I think makes sense if I'm playing the Radiant Greninja, because I'm going to be discarding a lot more stuff way more aggressively. But I think if you're just trying to keep it simple, like this is fine. I think this list is like a good 60, with the only thing that's like maybe debatable is the Ditto. But I like the Ditto. I think the Ditto can stay. I'm also not sure how I feel about Iono, but that's neither here nor there. We're almost done. We got finally the ends deck. We actually get to talk about new cards that aren't the Clefairy, the Meddling Memo. I have to remember what these guys do. This one is trade. So discard a card, draw two, and then it can copy any of your ends Pokemon. This one does Delphox attack for 90/90, which is okay. And then this tack, is attack good? I guess it hits Goldengo. It's kind of funny. How much damage, or how many energies do you need? So they need to have 11 energy. I'm counting the fucking Goldengo, Dragapult energy count. This is going to be, oh yeah, it probably says down here, 12 energy. So they have like almost all their energy on the field and can't attack with the Dragapult, then you can knock them out. But that seems awful. Okay, so we've determined that attack is almost bad. I mean, it could kill Goldengo, I guess, if most of their energies are in the discard. and you boss up a Goldengo, then you can kill it. Oh, give it that, I guess. Uh, Outrage, which is an okay attack to copy onto a bigger guy, and 170 damage is okay. Petra, just to make everything else easier. Reversal energies. Okay, actually, I like this because you don't want to play a 1-1 line to this guy. This guy is really bad as specifically a 1-1. Because if this is your only like game plan, then it sucks when your opponent bosses this up and kills it, and then you have nothing to be doing for the rest of the game because your whole thing is turned off. So I do think you have to run a thicker line of all of this to begin with, and so I like running the reversal energies because it actually gives more purpose to them. Uh, you're definitely not gonna end PP it up though. Like you're just gonna reversal onto these guys, which is okay, and you're gonna save the PD ups for the end Zoroark, which is also why I think it's fine to not run it at like a max 4 count because you really don't need like too many of these to get going. Your game plan could be like, let's just say your opponent gets the first attack and you lose 1 prize. For your like, you give up 4 prizes by attacking the 2 Zoroarks, and then also reversal energy with the Darmanitan hand. And we have to keep in mind that Manaphy is gone too, so there's no bench barrier. So, it's really strong. And then the league kind of core just makes a lot of sense because it turns off the opponent's team Evos. And even though we have one of our own, it doesn't seem like that we're always going to get it. And we have the Arvin, so, it's fine. And then we obviously have the End Save for Free Retreat. Huh. Is there any other thoughts I have on this deck? I have not been able to play with this deck yet. I haven't even done testing with a lot of the new Battle Partners cards, just because most of them are not that great. I was just kind of waiting for like more results to come in. There's also a 2-2 line of the boss and counter catcher. I do think the unfair stamp is really good too, because if you're drawing constantly a lot of Zoroark, then this is never going to hurt you. Obviously, because you're drawing 5 new cards, and other than that, you're putting your opponent in a bad spot. So hopefully you can like unfair stamp into like Hanorama Cannon, I guess, and knock them out. I guess the Body Mochi increases your damage too. I'm not sure where the Petra Body Mochi on the Zoroark combo comes in for a huge effect. Um, but it's there. Like, I'd have to see this more in action to believe it. Because I'm not entirely sold. I think the Petra itself is fine, but I'm not quite sure about the Body Mochi or the Defiance Band. But it definitely seems like it's in here for a reason. Otherwise, we wouldn't be running it. I just have to know like what math it specifically helps against, outside of just like pulling up low HP uh, liabilities on the bench. But you kill most of them already, right? Libriana and Rotom are rotate out, so you don't need to hit those. And then Squawkabilly is like a pathetic 160. And so the only thing that I could feel like the Mochi does off the top of my head is it allows you to kill the Pheasantipity if it's not damaged, which is okay. I guess like if your plan is to kill like Pheasantipity, you want to pair it with the Unfair Stamp as well. Uh, and how you get the KO is you do 170 with this guy without having any other damage on, and so you try to brick stamp them at the same time that you kill their Fez. That was okay, but obviously like the other damage has to be relevant somewhere too, or else we wouldn't be running the Defiance Band. So I think if there's something I'm definitely missing here, or some other relevant card, but it's important to keep in mind, I guess. Defiance Band could also just be for knocking out Clefairy. Like, Clefairy could just be like a big enough threat that Defiance Band is okay. And the Body Mochi also allows you to kill the Ogre Pods too. I did forget about that. My bad. So yeah, there's a few niche usages for it, but I'm still not entirely sold. It's like the best set of cards you should be playing. At least, especially the Defiance Band. I can see the Mochi being valuable, but the Defiance Band is kind of sketching me out. Flareon, woo. I think what's cool about seeing Leafeon in this deck, and then, well, I guess what's cool about seeing this Leafeon is that when Flareon, or when Prismatic was being revealed, I was like, Flareon is definitely the best of all of these, and then Leafeon and Sylveon are the only other two that are okay. And then there's a decent online English tournament where it was Flareon and Sylveon that did well, and then in Japanese, obviously, as we're looking at it, Flareon plus Leafeon did well. So I'm kind of like spot on with both of those being good. Maybe we'll see like Espeon come up too, but alas, alas. or not Espeon, but like Jolteon and the other ones come up, and I'll be proved wrong about those. But other than that, this seems like a pretty traditional list. The Black Belt's training allows you to one-shot Dragapult with Cornelian, which seems pretty good. Um, we got the Briar. I do like this Noctowl engine post-rotation. I think we have enough good stuff now that you don't have to rely on it, because before I'm running like Squawk, Lumineon, and a few other things, as opposed to having to commit to this Fanrodon Noctowl stuff. But I think it's fine post rotation to rely on this stuff because we don't have like the turbo engine around anymore. Other than that, it's pretty standard fare. Because we're running the Noctowl package, we also get to spice up our supporter and our like engine line here. We get to run the air like one Area Zero, one League Headquarters, one Briar, one Black Belts. I think that's really neat. I think the list is kind of cool. I just don't have too much else to add on to it right now because I haven't played too much with this specific Flareon build um, with the owls, but it seems very solid. And what's also nice is that the fan run up can also grab these EVs as well, so it just has a lot of good stuff for you to be grabbing. I think the only other thing that I might be curious about is there's no sparkly crystal in here. We're actually not running any Arvid, so we're running Prime Catcher instead, which I I mean that's probably good. I mean, Prime Catcher's never bad. I'm just surprised that Crystal doesn't make the cut. Because the Crystal usually patched out like a lot of my energy issues, and it also allows me to attack turn one. And now in this deck, attacking turn one is going to be pretty difficult because we're going to need to be able to retreat and then also glass. So like, well, let me clear my thoughts. You need to have a different Pokemon in the active at the beginning of the turn. You have to have a Terra Eevee EX in play. Then you have to somehow discard like your energies down here so you can Glass Trumpet onto this Eevee, and then you're going to have to find a way to switch out without any Latias, which means that you might be wasting an energy over here. You have to switch a Prime Catcher, and then afterwards you have to have the Flareon in the in your hand, and then another energy in your hand to evolve an attack. And that seems like a lot of work. When like turn one Flare Charge is extremely strong, so I'm interested in how this deck completely forfeits that. And then I'm stupid because now I'm looking at the double Crispin in here, so. uh, I mean, it's still only two Crispins, so you're not going to hit it reliably every time. And I guess I'll just substitute for Fanron on attack. But I really like Burning Charge on turn one of the game because it really like puts you super far ahead. But, I mean, it's still interesting. I'm really happy to see Flareon doing well. I mean, it's my favorite evolution, and I've put a lot of time into playing that deck. So I'm happy it has some results. And then we're getting on to the last deck here, which is just Goldengo. With the Dunsparce, I'm surprised it's not playing Dun EX, but it kind of uses the combo I was predicting to be good, which I said I thought Levincia was really good in Goldengo, and we're seeing it here. It allows you to pull two lightning energies from your discard pile back into your hand, so just having the Levincia in play is going to be able to guarantee you an extra plus 100 or yeah, a plus 100 damage every turn, and then you'll have to find like superior energy retrievals to get the rest. But one superior energy retrieval plus a Levincia is just good enough to do 300 damage, which is super solid. Other than that, it's just kind of basic fare here with a bunch of other stuff. Big on the Irving count, which I think is good, but I wish there was like one more. It's like one more tool in here. I couldn't tell you what it should be, but I feel like you got to be putting in something here. Because two tools feels extremely low. Like whether it's a second team evolution or even like a Regipand, I guess. Um, yeah, I don't know. I can even see like Cape of Toughness for the Fezzanipity and the Monkey Dory, perhaps. I think the only other sad part too is that we have to run the 70 HP to Dunsparce's because of Dragapult's existence. We can't run the 60 HP ones up for retreat, but that's also fine. The one of Morty's is also kind of cute. I don't have too much else to say about it, but if there's still quite a bunch of Area Zero decks, then Morty's is gonna get you hella value because instead of being like, oh, you discard a card and like draw five, and sometimes you discard a card and draw like seven, which is definitely a lot better, right? I don't know. I like this deck. I think it's simple. I think it's a very fair deck. I don't think this deck is like cheaty or anything. And the Dun Dun engine is extremely good. because we saw quite a few. I think we saw like two unfair stamps, and so if that ace spec ever becomes more popular, then Dun Dun is a really good way to play around it. And then obviously Goldengo itself has really good value. So a lot of this just compounds on itself. Like you shuffle a Dunsparce in the deck, you gold bonus, draw two more cards, and oh my god, it's Dunsparce again, and you do it again, and you just repeat the cycle infinitely. Alongside the set for Maniac also gave you your stuff back. Yeah, this is kind of sick. And it uses the Leviticum, which also proves me further correct. Anyways, that was all the deck list. I thought this was a very unique regionals. The amount of wall is a bit concerning because like fighting against wall is kind of boring, even if like teching around the matchup or building the deck is interesting. I think like having to play against deck and paper at locals is annoying, but besides that, like interesting regionals, I'm glad that we got to see a wide variety of archetypes, and I learned a few cool things. Like I'm really excited that I saw this Dragapult deck and this Raging Bull deck. Because even though like they're kind of like regular standard decks, we saw some techs that helped to push them like into this top 16 format when they were being so heavily targeted. But yeah, I mean, if you guys enjoyed this long rant, make sure to leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys around.